Hello and welcome to Taskmaster Talks with Kevin Sullivan. I am your host, JP John Boz, with a two-man power trip. And of course, joining me, the star of the show, the former WCW and ECW World Tag Team Champion, one of the greatest minds and bookers ever in the history of the business, the Games Master, the Taskmaster, the devil himself, Mr. Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, how you doing today, sir?
Not too good. I told you before we got on the air, I cracked a couple of ribs, and then I got some, I think, a sinus infection because I've been coughing all kinds of crap up. But we'll struggle through.
Yes, we'll get you through and get you in and out of here. So before we get going on the topic at hand, there was a bunch of fan questions that came in, a couple of good ones that I guess we never covered, or it's just something interesting, maybe outside the box questions. One of them, or actually a couple of them, were pretty good. So it goes back to Great American Bash 1998. It says, "Why was Conan selected for Goldberg's 100th opponent? Was there thought put into it, or was it just randomly Conan as his 100th opponent, 100th win?"
Uh, Conan's a big star, so the 100th win was a big deal. Who better than Conan? You know,
Did you think that it needed to be a longer match? Because it's only like a 3-minute match or so. Because I mean, obviously Conan is popular, or is that just Goldberg being Goldberg for you?
well, here's the thing: Billy, as you know, had just come out of the training center. He wasn't prepared to go any longer. And, Conan's drew as much money as anybody in the history of Mexico. He was over in this country, a very smart guy. So when I went to him, I believe I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Well, let's make it quick because he didn't want to expose him." So that was nice of Conan.
When you look at the popularity of Conan, obviously the Wolfpack is going on at this point. Was like merch sales or anything thinking of that? Because obviously he's gaining popularity. Is any thought on like, let's not hurt this guy by losing a Goldberg, or wasn't going to hurt him regardless?
Hulk Hogan lost to Goldberg, right?
Yep.
Everybody lost to Goldberg, so it wasn't going to hurt Conan.
Interesting wrinkle in all of this. Was it ever thrown out there that Conan was actually going to beat Goldberg and win the match? Ever a thought?
I've heard that rumor, and I don't know where that came from. Goes back to when you thought Cody should have won WrestleMania, right?
Right. Well, I don't know if I thought, but I thought he was going to win. Yes. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
okay,
I actually prefer that he didn't, though, because I think it's a lot better that he didn't. But yeah.
okay. And let's go back to that. All the people on the internet you saw, what a mistake, right?
Yeah.
What a mistake. Look how the ratings are to now.
Yep. Killing it.
Look who they've made, right?
Yep.
And here's what everybody forgets: Dusty never won the WWF title, but he got close, right?
Yep.
I believe that if Cody had won, there would have been repercussions because of Sammy not winning. I think it would have hurt Cody. Now he's had two matches with Brock, which have been damn good, and he took a loss, and he's on the trail. And I bet at WrestleMania 40, if nothing happens, we'll see the return match. And at that period, I'd say, yeah, Cody deserves it. I just don't think that would have, if Cody walked in from another company, let me rephrase that again. If Cody walked in from another company, what does that do for the other company?
Right.
There's a lot of things you can think
Right.
about. You can't book with your heart. It has to be with your head. So their business is doing incredible. Jimmy Uso now is another babyface, right?
Yeah. And Jey Uso pinned Roman at
Yeah,
the pay-per-view, shockingly.
yeah.
Super
So
shocking.
3 years he doesn't get beat. So we have Sammy, the Usos, Kevin, Cody,
Drew.
Drew. I mean, we got a lot of guys
Solo.
solo that could continue this thing for another year. Remember, the NWO didn't just last. How long's the bloodline been in existence? A year and a half?
Really, kind of, if you think about it, almost 3 years. When they really started with Jey Uso being a part of the group was 3 years ago. So kind of 3 years if you think about it.
But when do you think the real heat came on and they grabbed the brass bell and took it over? A year and a half.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. NWO lasted a lot longer, didn't they?
Technically, really 96 and then 99. They brought it back in 2000. They brought it back in 02. Yeah.
Yeah, but you just made my point, I think. Once they got beat and the bloom was off the rose, you couldn't recapture that. I'm thinking this could go on. I mean, I could see, isn't he is it next Monday they get the tribal court?
Friday the 7th, I think. Whenever they're at MSG. Yeah, it's on Friday.
Okay. Could you imagine what would happen if the three Usos jumped on Roman? He'd be a huge babyface.
Yep.
There's so many ways to go, and I don't think we'll see the end of this, but you have to end it sometime. Roman's gonna need a break. I like what they're doing with Cody and Brock. I mean, not many people beat Brock, right?
No, hardly. Yep.
Okay, so they're doing the right thing there, and he beat Dominic, who to me is one of the top heels in the company right now with Heat. He pinned him clean. Now the path has been. He's had some stumbles, but he's picked himself up like his old man did. So when WrestleMania 40 or whenever they decide to do it, I see that could be a huge pop. And then think about this. The Usos come down and jump Cody, and they ask Roman to be his partner. You don't think that will draw?
Right.
Or they could go in six-way. Usos and Solo against any combination, but we'll say Cody, Roman, and Sammy. Or Cody, Roman, and Kevin. Or Cody and Roman, whoever. I mean, there's a lot to still be. You know what I keep on saying? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. As long as these ratings keep on going, and that's, I don't hear any negatives about the bloodline from anybody that really knows the business. I told you, I saw Eric a couple of weeks ago,
Yep. Bischoff. Yep.
and I said, Eric, I thought they did the right thing with Roman going over. He said, this is the best angle ever.
High praise. Jeez Louise. From the mastermind along with you, the NWO, high praise.
Eric went to Japan and saw it, and he put this thing together. But does that tell you something?
Big time.
So let's relax and enjoy the show, what they're doing, and don't get so uptight about it because they're bringing you back every week. They're doing something right.
Now, with like saying Reigns, you don't want to beat him. That's the same thing with Goldberg at that point, right? You didn't want to beat him.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
basically.
And then if you beat Bill, you would expose them.
And the Conan thing is a weird thing because I've heard that rumor. I think Conan's talked about the rumor. I think Nash has talked about that rumor. Maybe he was drinking or fooling around joking, like, oh, maybe you'll lose to Conan. You never know. Maybe he was messing with Goldberg or something. You never know with Nash. But he said that before, that he thrown that out there. Oh, maybe he was going to lose.
Yeah, I mean, if Billy had more experience, it might have been the thing to do. But once you beat Bill, I'll give you a perfect example. Oh, sorry. Once Tyson got beat by Buster Douglas, he he lost that specialness.
Yeah, the aura.
Yeah,
That was crazy. Looking back, I mean, just nuts. And the odds on that was at
yeah,
44-1. I mean, just nuts looking back at Tyson and that. But it's interesting too because Hennig and Rick Rude were kind of, well, really Rude was the manager. Hennig was kind of feuding with Goldberg at that point. That was going to be a big match for Goldberg once he wins the title in July 6th. But it seems like Hennig and Rude maybe could have interfered on Conan's
yeah.
behalf, and that's why Goldberg loses. But still, that would have been terrible, right? I mean, it doesn't matter who cheats; it still would have looked bad.
Yeah, you have to, he had to lose the way he won, I thought. Clean.
So then the next question is whose idea was it for Hulk Hogan, Hollywood Hogan, and Bret Hart to face Roddy Piper and Macho Man Randy Savage at the Great American Bash 98? A colossal dream match. Whose idea is to put that one together?
Uh, Probably Hulk's and Roddy's and Eric.
Is that a way to kind of keep Hogan and Bret away from wrestling each other in some sort of kind of weird way? Because it felt like when Bret was there, Bret should be wrestling.
Hulk didn't want to wrestle Bret.
So by teaming together, he's thinking like, oh, this will kind of keep him away from actually me wrestling him one on one.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, think about when Bret got beat by Yokozuna.
Yep.
What happened next minute?
Hogan comes down, he beats Yokozuna in 3 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that is crazy though. But it's such a huge. I mean, it's like four of the biggest wrestlers of all time. I mean, Hogan and Bret, and they win. They defeat Piper and Savage. But it just seems like wow, that's kind of like random, and it's not the main event. So it just seems like I don't know, just strange almost that that's not the main event.
well, to me, it is the main event. I mean, you're not going to get four bigger names than that. You know, they could have went on first, and to me, it's still the main event, right? In people's eyes.
Yep. And when they were building up the pay per view, you figure, well, it's got to be the main event. And then they throw in, or you guys throw in another thing. Piper versus Savage happens right after that. So Piper and Savage lose the tag match, and then Piper versus Savage. Why the bonus match? What was up with that?
My personal belief that is Roddy.
That he wanted to get a win back?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a little bit of political maneuvering there by Piper.
Yeah, I think so. Roddy's a very smart businessman.
So it's one of those things where Savage, which is nuts, he loses by submission in the tag match, and then he loses to Piper. Piper attacks him right afterwards and kind of leads into him winning. So, I mean, Piper kind of sneak attacks him. But, wow, Savage loses twice in one night, to Hogan and Bret as a tag team, and then Piper one-on-one. That's just no problems with that? That just seems out of whack.
If there was going to be a problem, Randy wouldn't have gone for it. Randy and Piper were pretty good friends. They probably came up with the idea, well, we're losing. Let's create something that the interest goes off of us losing the tag match until us starting the program.
Did the injury to Macho Man, he had a knee injury at this point, he had other ailments and stuff. Did that play a role into it? The fact that, all right, the guy's hurt, let's just, you just lose a little bit on the way out, and then we'll write you back in once you get healthy.
Yeah, and it got Piper a good win.
When you look at that, is it weird that Sting versus the Giant in a one-on-one match for the tag titles is the main event of the show?
Well, you got to remember they had put a lot of emphasis on Sting. You know what I'm saying? A lot. So this was another way to make Sting look like the figurehead of WCW.
Do you like a one-on-one match for a tag belt?
No.
What's up with that? Why do that? Eventually, Sting picks Nash to be his partner, and they're tag champs. But it's weird. He beats the Giant in a one-on-one match, becomes the tag champs.
Yeah, I've never understood that stuff.
Is that more of Nash booking? Is that you? Like what's
Uh, I think that was maybe that they were trying to get it to Sting and give him the win. Do you know what I mean?
the big hero?
Yeah, the big hero. That's my only. Because if I remember correctly, I was questioning that too.
Were you a fan of Sting with the red face paint, Sting in the NWO Wolfpack?
No, I like the Crow. I like to have seen him by himself. You know, he had been by himself for so long.
For sure. It just didn't make sense to me that he was NWO or Wolfpack. It just didn't really vibe with me. It just was like, man, he's the savior of WCW. I know they did it and he got a huge pop the one night that he turned Wolfpack, but man, it just didn't fit with me. Didn't equate.
Didn't equate with me either. So there we are.
Who was behind that, the Wolfpack?
I think there was a lot of division amongst themselves at the time. You got to remember they had a lot of influence.
Oh, yeah.
Kevin and Scott, Hogan on the other side. You know.
It seemed like, and Hall and Nash have talked about this, for years, obviously before Hall passed, but that it might have been some sort of punishment to do the Wolfpack the way they did it. Because if you look at it, they fire Waltman, who's their boy, and Hogan says in an awesome promo, which is hilarious, but he's kind of shooting. He goes, he couldn't cut the mustard, so he got fired. He's just saying that on TV about six. I was like, holy crap. Because the real Wolfpack is Hall, Nash, and Six. It's just those three. That's the
Yeah.
real Wolfpack. Then they split up Hall and Nash. Nash is Wolfpack, and Hall is Hollywood. What's up with that? I mean, that's got to be something to that as far as Hogan and Bischoff separating them because maybe a little bit of they're getting too much power or something.
That could be it. And it could be Hulk showing who's the boss.
And did he want Hall on his team because that's like the cool factor? Like NW Hollywood Hall is a lot better than Hogan being with Savage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The cool fact is Kevin and Scott and Sean.
And then if you split them up, obviously Hogan wants Hall on his side, and then Nash is going to have to be feuding on the other side.
Right.
So that's it for the questions that came in. But the topic at hand, what I wanted to talk to you today about was the Iron Sheik. I know he passed away a few weeks ago. We didn't have
Right.
the chance to talk about it then, but I wanted to kind of just briefly talk about the Iron Sheik with you. And just curious, when was the first time you ever met Sheiky Baby?
I met Sheik one time in Florida back in about 73 or 74. Then I went to Calgary for 6 weeks and really got to know him there.
When he was in Florida, you actually had a match. I don't know if you remember that. In January of 74, he was Ali Vaziri at that point. You fought him to a draw in Miami Beach, Florida.
Yeah, I remember that. He was about 180 pounds.
What'd you think about him at that point?
Oh, he's a great amateur wrestler. And that's why they brought him in. It was also a favor from Eddie to Vern. Because he didn't stay long, did he?
No, because like you said, in the end of 74, when you see him again in Stampede, you wrestled him and he's Kushro Vazari. That was in Calgary, Alberta,
Right.
over at the Victoria Pavilion. So he doesn't really stay there long at all.
No, no.
Did you think of him like, oh, this guy's a shooter, or you think like, oh, he's kind of skinny, he's from Iran? Like what were your personal thoughts on him?
I thought he was a tremendous athlete, and I knew all about his credentials. And he did those, the clubs. It was unbelievable.
The Persian clubs, you ever try
Yeah.
them?
Oh, I couldn't pick up one with two hands, I don't think. That's great.
Did the boys try them a lot? Those Persian clubs?
No, nobody would be embarrassed. They might have done it when no one was in the dressing room.
Because wasn't Jim Duggan talking about he couldn't do it? Like, which is crazy because Duggan is huge and strong. He's got those big arms, but it's like he couldn't do it. But I think the only guy that could do it was Backlund, right? The only guy that, obviously, besides Iron Sheik.
Well, the guy that brought the clubs to the U.S. was Carl Gotch.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, Carl did them easily.
What does that like entail? Just shoulder strength, hand strength? Like how the hell? Like it seems like it's impossible to do it.
Forearm, wrist, your whole body. Your base, you know what I mean? Your legs and ass, your abs. It's very difficult.
The only guy of recent time that I can remember, Al Snow was doing them. I remember that
Oh,
was the only
really?
guy recently. Yeah, it was pretty damn impressive. He got pretty big, but yeah, for sure, it was impressive as hell.
He got incredible shape. I really admire Al.
So looking at Shiki Baby, who actually brings him into the wrestling business, as far as you know? Like, did Eddie actually bring him in?
No, Vern Gagne.
Okay. So Vern literally brings him in and trains him. It's not like he went off someplace else and then Vern trained him. He literally Vern brought him in and trained him.
Yeah, at the farm.
What did Vern think about him? Obviously, the Iranian athlete, it just seemed to fit his camp so well.
Yeah, and Vern kind of had that Eddie Graham mentality. Look at the guys that he had there. What was the big heavy set? Chris Taylor. He went to the Olympics. Remember that?
Hmm. Brad Rangans.
Ringens. There's a bunch of other guys. When Vern first started, he had Mike DiBiase, I believe, and Joe Scarpello. These were national champions.
And then even on the other side of things, for like Olympic perspective, but weightlifting, Campatera.
Yeah. Ken was the first man to press 500 pounds.
It's a freak. And obviously, your buddy Nate, Ric Flair, was training with Vern
Yeah.
around that time period as well.
And Rick was a very strong power lifter.
Still lifting weights,
Yeah.
crazily enough.
Yeah.
Not sure why, but he's still keeping in great shape.
Yeah. Waiting for the next comeback.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that last match isn't the last match. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see. So when is the next time like you see or hear of Sheiky Baby again? Because I know we mentioned Florida and Calgary, but where do you see him again?
I caught him on TV as the Iron Sheik. Oh, I got to no, I got to. I was with the Sheik in New York in '76.
Really?
Yeah, zoom in my abs, Mr. Cameraman. I couldn't believe how big he got.
Yeah, right. From if you look at him beginning of his career, then all of a sudden when he's in the WWF, I mean, he's like a little tank. He's a
Yeah,
monster there.
yeah,
Not height wise, but body wise, unbelievable.
yeah, yeah,
Probably about 6 foot tall, but I mean, just a huge, ripped up guy.
yeah. I'd say he was 5'11".
What did you think about the Sheik? Like the gimmick, the character, the look? You seemed like you were kind of stunned by what you saw.
Yeah, and later on, I got to be the original Sheik's buddy, and I worked for him. He was great to me, very good to me. I mean, I heard all the horror stories about the payoffs, but at that time, he gave me a huge guarantee to go to work for him, and he paid for everything: my hotels, my meals, my car, the whole thing. He was great. So I brought it up to him. I said, the Iron Sheik. He said, "Oh, Cosmo came to me and asked me if he could use it." And I said, "Sure." So that was nice that he went and asked for permission.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
So basically, he's a great wrestler in Iran. He's part of like the guy Takti, the legendary wrestler Takti from Iran. He's kind of his protege, if you will, kind of in his camp. He speaks out, Takti does against the government. They kill Takti.
yeah,
Sheik kind of gets scared, even though he was working with the Shah of Iran. He was a bodyguard over there. He was doing all this stuff with them. It's like, wow, if you could kill this guy who's like a legend here, what's he going to do with me? He could easily kill me. I'm his protege. So then he leaves, comes to the United States, and that's where he kind of meets up with Vern and a legendary Billy Robinson, who probably helps him in a little bit of his shooting world, if you will.
yeah. And do you know that the Sheik used to sleep at the foot of the bed of the Shah?
No, interesting.
And he got stabbed in the head with an ice pick about 4 times. He had little holes in his head.
Holy moly. So somebody was attacking the Shah and he stood in between them.
Yeah, yep,
Tough mother, right? Oof, tough
yeah,
guy.
yeah.
Interesting with him. he would actually go on and like train some wrestlers. I don't know if people are aware of that. Like he would actually help train wrestlers. So guys like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat got a little bit of training from him. Greg Gagne himself, Jim Brunzell. So he was actually, for his lack of English, could actually help teach wrestlers how to wrestle. Hey, Dr. Tom Pritchard, he was his trainer. So
Really?
yeah, it's interesting. He was actually good at it. It shows you, I guess you don't have to have strong English to be, it's almost like an unwritten language.
Well, it's like the great chess players. They know how to play, right?
Yep.
And they can, because chess is a complicated game, but once you know it, you don't really need to talk to be taught.
Now, interestingly enough, Iron Sheik actually said that Snuka, Jimmy Snuka, kind of gave him the idea of like, hey, why don't you do more of like a Iranian, like be more like play that up more, but as a heel. So he kind of gave a little bit of credit to Snuka, which is surprising. You just don't think of Snuka as like the idea man, if you will. He's not like Scott Hall thinking like, hey, Crow Sting is a great idea. You know what I mean? You don't think of Jimmy Snuka like that.
Yeah, but Jimmy had been around and knew what worked.
What did you think of the boots?
I thought, I understood why, but you have Abdullah, you have the original Sheik, but they're not in the territory at the time, and they're not going to come in. So there you
Did
are.
he have to ask permission to use those boots?
I don't know, but I'm sure once the Sheik granted him permission to be the Sheik, the boots went along with him.
Kind of a staple, really,
Yeah,
of him. You know what I mean? Like that's one of the things that everybody remembers when they think of Iron Sheik.
yeah, absolutely.
So he ends up back, of course. I mean, he wrestles for Championship Wrestling in Florida again. He goes to Mid South for a little bit. He's in Georgia for a little bit. He's actually in Jim Crockett Promotions for a little bit. After basically a 2-year stint at WWF, he goes back to the WWF in 1983 for a little guy named Vince McMahon Jr., Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And that kind of changes the direction of wrestling for a little bit. I was talking to Stevie Kern not too so long ago about it. And, that could have been him in that Backlund spot, as you know, as he said that you had once told him. But it's interesting. Vince Jr. didn't see Backlund as the global phenomenon. Obviously, he was right because Hogan's the man, but he didn't see Backlund as like his guy. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the biggest mistake in the history of the wrestling business was not turning Billy Graham babyface. He sold 19 Madison Square Garden shows out of 20.
Yes.
No Ibney being the most, but the most consistent
Yep.
of all time.
It's weird. If you're a booker, wouldn't you be like, you know what? We got to change directions here. This guy is money. Meaning superstar Billy Graham.
Well, Vince Sr. was a really honorable man. He gave Billy the date he was going to win it and the date he was going to lose it the week he came in.
So what do you think about Bob Backlund being champion for 5 years, though? Is that just him being? That's what he said. That's what he wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, his word was his bond.
Now it's interesting because of the way WWF booked themselves. God, for 30 years, 20 years, really 20 plus years to this point, was that the heel champion would only really be the transitional champion,
Right.
meaning that really, Buddy Rogers held the belt for a little bit until obviously Bruno beat him, but then it's Ivan Koloff for a little bit, it's Pedro Morales for a long bit, then it's Stan the Man for a little bit, then it's Bruno again for a run. Then it's Superstar Billy Graham. He actually got an extended run as the transitional champion, which was crazy because, Ivan Koloff held it for 2 weeks, whatever that was, or 3 weeks. Stasiak held it for 8 days. Like, it just seems like that's the thing, transitional champion as a heel. So when Backlund is a champion, they don't want Hogan to beat him, the babyface to beat the babyface. They need a transitional champion, and they go with the Iron Sheik. What did you think about the Iron Sheik in the late month of December 1983, winning the WWF World Championship from Bob Backlund?
Well, you make an American hero, right? Meaning Hogan. What better way to win the belt?
Right, huge heel. The Iran conflict, Contra, all that other stuff going on. You were just, Iran obviously was hated at this point. He's hated as a heel. He's super, super over. Do you think that that was the right choice? Iron Sheik winning the belts.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Did
mean,
you
we
like the
have
finish?
with Hogan.
No, no, with Sheik beating Backlund when the Arnie Skolin throws in the towel.
I've never been uh, privy to. Did Arnie? Did Backlund? I've heard some rumors that Backlund didn't know about that finish.
Wow, really? I thought he knew about it. I thought he liked it because it kind of kept him strong, even in defeat. Wow, really? You heard he didn't hear about it? Wow.
Yeah, but that wasn't from Backlund. It was probably internet rumors. So who knows? But it did keep him strong.
What's going on with Bobby Backlund lately? Have you heard from him or heard anything? Because he's not been doing anything at
Well,
all.
I saw him about, I guess, 6 or 8 months ago, but that's the last time I've seen him.
Yeah, he hasn't been doing much. He hasn't been out there on the circuit, if you will. I know
Yeah,
he's obviously he's in his 70s now. Maybe he's just hanging him up, but it's just interesting. He hasn't done anything in a while.
yeah,
So Arnie Skolin throws in the towel. Iron Sheik is the champion, and man, does the Madison Square Garden crowd absolutely hate Sheik. I mean, hate beyond belief.
yeah.
So then, of course, Hulk Hogan comes into fray. Vince McMahon Jr.'s Golden Boy. He defeats Iron Sheik January 23rd, 1984. So Sheik basically holds the belt for a little bit less than a month. Typical, right, though, of WWF in that point. I mean, it's just going to be a transitional champion for Hogan and the Hogan era to begin.
Right.
Do you like that, though? Like, Sheik doesn't kind of get his moment in the sun, or is that just, I mean, the way it should have been?
That's the way they do it. They were always. You got to go back to the famous riot of
Pedro Morales and Blackjack Mulligan?
no, even before that,
Oh,
of Dick the Bruiser and Dr. Jerry Graham against Rocker and Carpante, where they rioted, and then they put the rule in that no one could go to the matches unless you were 14 or older. Did you know that?
yes. Yep.
And
Which
they
makes those sellouts even better because you don't have kids, which is like a big part of the audience.
and they lost about 1,200 shares. So
Oh, I didn't realize that.
yeah, I don't think they wanted to have that kind of heat. And then you know it didn't help that Mulligan almost died with Pedro.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely not for sure. When you look at it, is it true? In fact, because Iron Sheik says it, Greg Gagne denies it. Vern Gagne, I don't know if he denied it or not, but was he really offered $100,000 to break Hogan's leg
I wouldn't doubt it.
and then bring the title to the AWA? Because hey, I brought you in. I don't care, Vince is your cash cow, but hey, let's break Hogan's leg and bring the title back since Hogan and Vince were killing my territory.
I wouldn't doubt it at all.
So Sheiky Baby doesn't do it. He's an honorable man, even though in a shoot, I think Sheik could probably take Hulk pretty easily, right?
I don't know how easy. You know, Terry's pretty salty, but yeah, the longer it went, I think that Sheiky would have beat him. But it would have been interesting. But he probably would have beaten him in a where they were working, and Hogan was going along with it. Until he got in position.
Right. It's funny, like the match about 6 minutes, but it's great. Like the crowd is nuts. Like they're amped beyond belief. And when he wins, forget about it. Obviously, that was the right choice because I mean the crowd goes nuts and he launches WWF into the next stratosphere. So thank you. Think about it. Like thank you, Iron Sheik, for putting Hulk over and putting him in that position. So he was in an awesome spot, like to really help out the WWF and help out the Hulkster and really kind of put him over the top.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a great heel at the time uh, with the problems we have in the Middle East.
Yep. Do you think that there should have been more return matches? I mean, there was, but they were short, and there was a big return match at MSG, but it was even less than the first match. I think it was 4 minutes. I mean, it was just for some reason it wasn't one of those things where, hey, the guy wins the title and they have this big program together. They didn't have a big program together. Slaughter actually had a bigger program with Sheik.
Well, I think they appreciate what the Sheik did. And if he went around with Hogan in every town and got beat, he would have been severely diminished because he got beaten quick. He stayed there for quite a long time.
Yeah, it's interesting. In '84, Hogan fights Sheik a few times, but it's like, wow, it's like he goes into a little mini feud with the Max Superstar. Like that's his first. And then it's like a little bit of Orndorff, a little bit of Piper towards the end of the year. Dr. D. David Schultz was a big feud. So it wasn't like Iron Sheik and Hogan ruled the roost in '84. It was only a few matches.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that was done on purpose because,
Kept Sheik strong.
yeah, and I think they appreciate what the Sheik did.
They do put him in an awesome tag team with Nikolai Volkov with Classy Freddie Blassie as the manager. They do win the WWF tag team titles. Man, you want to talk about heat. Anytime these two are on the mic, the crowd just absolutely hated. Obviously, Iran, Russia, the Middle East. I mean, they do not like these guys. So really smart move by Vince. And I guess they just don't do that kind of stuff today where it's like not cheap heat, but it's like easy heat. Like these two, give them the tag titles, let them go on the microphone and just get booed out of the building.
It's a different world. I mean, they might actually get canceled, right? With
Yep.
cancel culture.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they'll get in trouble. But with all that, because of the rock and wrestling era, because of the TV shows, because of the music videos, because of the action figures, Iron Sheik becomes mainstream almost. I mean, he becomes a huge, huge star. Obviously, the Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling, the awesome cartoon show back in the day. But I feel like, he's basically, if you asked anybody of that era, like just random people, who's the Iron Sheik? Like, oh, he's the wrestler. Nobody likes him, right? I mean, he's mainstream.
I heard, and I don't know if this was for a quarter or half a year, uh, when the residuals of all that stuff was coming out, he made $400,000. Now I don't know if that was for a quarter or a half a year, but that's a lot of money. He was on everything, like you said, the cartoons, the dolls, the big buddies, the whole thing. He was the integral part. If you got Hogan, you've got the Sheik, right, to play with.
Yep. Yep. Literally it's ingenious because if you think about it, everybody owned the Hogan figure, but who is Hogan going to beat up? Iron Sheik and Piper. Like those are
Yeah,
the two, or and even Orndorff. Like those are the guys you want because Hogan's going to beat them up.
right. That's it.
So as he starts winding down his career, there is a controversy in '87. Him and Hacksaw are actually riding together, and they get caught with drugs in the New Jersey Turnpike, and all of a sudden it's out there. Wait a second, these guys are feuding. They hate each other. They're USA, Iran. They're traveling together. This was not good for the business, right?
Yeah, and I'm surprised they both didn't get fired because Duggan was he suspended for like a couple of weeks and that was it.
Yeah, and then really Sheik leaves in October of '87, but he didn't get fired right away either.
Yeah,
And I love that story where Vince says, "Hey, Sheik, got to talk to you." Came up positive on the drug test. He's like, "Oh, that's great. Yes, positive, very good." And Vince is like, "No, that's that's not good at all. You got busted." Like, so he got caught a few times, obviously with his demons there, but to get caught and then be all over the national. I mean, this was on the papers. I mean, this was on the news. This was
yeah,
everywhere that these two were together. Not good for the business. Breaking kayfabe like that.
yeah. And where's Duggan from? In Upper New York.
Glens Falls.
His dad was the chief of police in Glens Falls.
Oh shit. Oh, so that terrible for him.
Yeah, yeah,
So Sheiky Baby kind of leaves in October '87, comes back in '88, leaves, goes to the NWA for a little bit, goes to World Class, goes to WWC down in Puerto Rico, goes to the AWA. Really spent a few years with WCW. Kind of, didn't do much there. It's kind of just you could tell he's fallen off. Maybe some injuries, maybe some drug use is getting to him. Just not the Sheik that we knew of the '80s, the powerhouse. They actually bring him back again to the WWF in '91, '92. They make him Colonel Mustafa. He's in the Triangle of Terror, your favorite, the Three Faces of Fear, if you will,
yeah,
with Mustafa, General Adnan, and Slaughter. So it's not like Vince didn't like him or didn't appreciate him or didn't always think of it. He did bring him back, and he wasn't the main event of SummerSlam '91. So he did like him, even though he's pretty much out of his prime at this point.
yeah. His ankles were ridiculously bad. Ridiculously. It was like he was walking on the side of his feet.
It's a good thing though. Like if Vince is thinking of you, you're by the way, you're in the main event of SummerSlam against Hogan and the Warrior with Slaughter, who's the hottest heel in the business. I mean, that's pretty damn good. Then really kind of fading out of his career, he comes back as a manager in 1996. I mean, he's doing all different things with WWF kind of through the years. I think something that everybody remembers is the WrestleMania 17 Battle Royal, the gimmick Battle Royal with all those legends. And as the story goes, Iron Sheik ends up winning it because he was so injured and so hurt that if they threw him over the top rope, they're afraid he might break both his hips, so he had to win it.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
what you heard? You heard that as well?
Well, his ankles, JP, you couldn't believe his ankles. He's walking on the side of his feet.
That's crazy. Ooh. Man,
Yeah.
just what he did for the business is crazy. Like he just really messed up his body big time.
Yeah.
But it's funny. It's like who else would have won the WrestleMania 17 gimmick Battle Royal? The greatest gimmick, the Iron Sheik, right? I mean, it's such a good gimmick.
Yeah.
Of course, he gets honored 2005, the WWE Hall of Fame. And actually, if you look at it, people can say he didn't speak English that well. That might be a little bit of a work because he was awesome during that speech. It's one of the greatest Hall of Fame speeches of all time. Do you think his voice or whatever, his when he speaks English, do you think it was a little bit of a work?
No. No.
Shoot.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like sometimes you go into that cheeky baby stuff and then sometimes not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess so, but it was a complete shoot.
What'd you think about like the second part of his career when he was winding it down, when he would do that crazy Sheik stuff? Like he'd be on Howard Stern, he'd be saying, I'm going to humble you, Brian Blair, all that stuff, like that part of Sheik. What did you think about that like era of the Iron Sheik?
Well, he was making money. That's what he was trying to. He was hurt. He couldn't go anymore. JP.
Always hilarious. Like I'm going to make you humble. I'm going to
Yeah.
fuck you in the ass. I'm going to make Brian Blair humble. For some reason, obsessed with Brian Blair.
Yeah.
Any insight? I know Brian Blair's your boy. Any insight?
No, I don't know why.
See, Brian Blair told me when I interviewed him, probably last year, I asked him about it. He said that they were shooting. Like Sheik would bring in the guys in the ring when Blair was a young boy. So Sheik had no idea that Blair was like a good athlete or that he could wrestle a little bit. He knew nothing, but he'd bring guys into the ring and just wipe the mat with them. So when he brought Brian Blair in the ring, Blair was actually not beating him, but he was able to like fend him off a little bit. So the
Right.
other guys would be like, "Ooh, wow, Sheik, wow, you really got tested." And like he said, that always kind of stuck with Sheik that like he didn't wipe the floor with him, and like I'm sure the guys were ribbing him and teasing him that he didn't beat Brian Blair, soundly or whatever. So for
Right.
some reason, Blair said he's like, I think that stuck with Sheik forever. Like for some reason in his head, like, oh fuck that Brian Blair.
Yeah, I'm sure it did.
Just one of those funny things. But what do you think is just overall like the legacy of the Sheik? Even
Oh,
the WWF title run, the legendary career, mainstream, Howard Stern, everything.
I think if people don't understand what he did, it was pretty amazing. He started the Hulkamania.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
And,
biggest thing ever, probably. Yeah,
yeah, and he drew a lot of money. And he was a great amateur wrestler. I think he's one of the most influential guys from my era.
for sure, man. Iron Sheik, R.I.P. to an absolute legend. The Iron Sheik
Right.
passed away at the age of I think it was 80 or 81. So, R.I.P. Iron Sheik.
Exactly. We'll all miss him.
All right, let's hit the plugs. You follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Two Man Power Trip. Check out the website, tmptempire.com. Follow Kevin on Instagram at Taskmaster Talks. Kevin, what else you got going on?
Well, I'm not going to be doing anything for a while. I cracked some ribs, and I'm going to see the doc tomorrow, see what can happen. So, but I'm forging on, my friend.
All right, sounds good. Hopefully, you feel better
Yeah.
as you're forging on. But thank you, everybody out there, for listening. We'll see you right back here next week for a little Taskmaster Talks.